I really want to thank everyone for being here. I'm Allison. I am the program director at LiveGirl, and we are so glad that we're able to offer this during these unprecedented times. It can be hard for many of us to help the children in our lives cope, especially when we're feeling uncertainty as well. So today we are so fortunate to have Tracey here to help us help them. Tracey is a licensed clinical social worker treating adolescents and adults using behavioral solutions focused on psychodynamic therapy. So here's how this will work. Tracey will speak for 6 to 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. There is a Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. So when you're ready to ask a question, go ahead and put it in there. There is a box if you'd like to ask a question anonymously. This is a safe space. The webinar is being recorded for any parents who couldn't make it right now. So if you are uncomfortable, just please use the anonymous button. And I will also share my email address at the end so you can send me any questions. All right, Tracey, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining. It's great to see everybody, even though I can't see you. These are, yeah, as Allison said, these are unprecedented times. The universe is asking us to put a pause button on our lives, and the mandatory pause button is certainly less pleasant than stumbling upon it or choosing to do it on your own. But the result is the same, is that I think that we have needed this pause for a while. So that to me is the silver lining, if you will, is that we might learn new ways of prioritizing what's important in our lives, scaling down, slowing down our pace, learning to communicate in different ways. That's the hope that we can hold on to during these times, that this pause button can be useful. So I wanted to just make a few sort of bullet points that'll frame our conversation, but really I want this to be a dialogue, and questions that you have, we'll go back and forth. So the first thing is to talk about fear, right? So fear is one of the most common primitive emotions that we have. Fear and sadness are the two most common emotions that we have as human beings. It's very primitive, and it's there for a reason. It's there to keep us safe. So we want to be able to feel fear because we need to know what potentially is life-threatening. Anxiety is a more evolved experience because it takes fear and it attaches thoughts to it. So the thoughts are actually what drive up the fear, the intensity of the fear, and turn it into this anxious state. So if you think about the two sides of our brain, not really sides of our brain, the two parts of our brain, fear is very, very deep in our midbrain. It's our primitive brain called the amygdala. And when that fires off and sends signals to the rest of our body that something might be life-threatening, our thoughts then take over, and those are in our frontal cortex, right? The part of our brain that's not fully developed until we're 25. So kids aren't operating with a fully functioning frontal cortex. But the thoughts that we have about the fear are either going to drive up the intensity of the fear, or they're going to dial it down. And when the thoughts become overwhelming, that part of our brain kind of shuts down and the fear takes over. It hijacks our brain, and we can't rationally, reasonably, logically think through what it is that we're being faced with. So ordinary situations for many people become life-threatening. Now, this is one of those situations where everybody is anxious because literally we're in this uncertain time where the potential of losing life, getting very sick, losing jobs, all of it is very real. So our brains are on hyperdrive, right? And our thoughts are really, really driving up that fear and keeping us in sort of an anxious state all the time. So what we need to do to combat that conscious anxious state is to keep our frontal cortex, our reasonable part of our brain, online, so that we can, yes, we can feel the fear and we can acknowledge that that is very real, and we can also sort of reason through the actual reality, the facts of the situation for us personally. So we're going to get to that. The first thing that we do when we're in a highly anxious state, so if your kid comes to you and they're really anxious, right, or they're really upset, right, and you don't know maybe where it's coming from. They could be angry, they could be really sad. Whatever the intensity of emotion is, the first thing we want to do is lower the intensity of the emotion so that whatever reasonable thoughts that they can have come back online. So think about it like when you have too many programs open on your computer and you get that sort of that circle, that beach ball, if you have, you know, that just spins around. That means that the operating system is overloaded. That's the same thing that happens with our brain when we get intense emotions. So the first thing we need to do is lower the intensity of the emotion, and we do that by distracting the brain. That gives the brain time to come back online, right? And so we do that by not dealing with the problem. Whatever is driving the fear and the anxiety, we kind of put that aside for the moment. We acknowledge that it's there, but we want to just put that aside and distract the brain. And the brain is very easily distracted. So some of the things that you want to do are making lists. Lists are great. Lists about, you know, and this is great to do with kids. Let's list all the ice cream flavors that we can. If your kids like sports, name all the baseball teams you can think of. Name all the basketball teams you can think of. Name your, you know, if your kids like to, you know, kind of more academic challenges, right? So you could say, let's name the 50 states, right? Name all the states that begin with A. Name all the states that begin with B. All the state capitals, name as many towns in Connecticut as you can, right? Making lists, right? It's a complete distraction. There's no end goal. If they name one, that's fine. This is just to distract the brain and lower the intensity of the anxiety. Another great thing to do is to focus on anything below the neck and sort of engage in physical activity. And this is a great time to clear out your basement, your shed, your garage, and find all those old kid toys that aren't getting played with, like hula hoops and jump ropes and balance boards, or those boards that we use that were popular at one time to, you know, that were on wheels. Juggling balls, shooting basketballs, anything to just do some physical activity. And that's the only goal. We're not talking, we're just doing something. Singing, dancing, tossing a ball against the wall while you're singing, you know, shooting basketball while you're saying, you know, your ice cream flavors, anything that we can do to just lower the intensity of the emotion. And that's it. Maybe 3 to 5 minutes of that. Complete distraction, not talking about what it is that's driving up the fear. Then you check in with yourself or with the other person that you're, you know, kind of working with. How are we feeling? Are we feeling a little calmer? Yes, we're feeling a little calmer. Okay. Once you get that anxiety to a level where you can have a more reasonable conversation, then you can start saying, okay, well, what are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid I'm going to get sick. So then you start doing some checking of the facts. And I really want to caution you not to check global facts, right? And in fact, I would actually say, you know, the amount of time you want to spend checking what's going on globally, you want to really keep it to a minimum, okay? But what we can do is we can check the facts about what we're doing individually in our homes, in our families, right? So we're washing our hands, we're not going outside, right? We're social distancing. We're, you know, monitoring our symptoms. We haven't been out of the house for so many days, right? We're taking care. We're, you know, getting our groceries sent in. Just checking the facts, not globally, but what are we doing as a family to stay safe, right? So keeping it very small. Once you kind of check the facts, then you kind of want to say, okay, let's go and what's next on our to-do list to do. And as quickly as possible, without telling the kid, hey, listen, this isn't what you should be worrying about. I got this. We're going to be fine. You shouldn't be worried. You're a kid. Go back to work, right? That's dismissal. What we want to do is we want to acknowledge the fear. We want to lower the intensity of the emotion. We want to kind of do some checking of the facts. And then we want to say, let's try and get back to what we were doing. Here's what I was doing. What were you doing, right? So that whole process, you don't want to spend more than like 10 minutes on that process, and you want to kind of get back to work. Now, they may spend 10 minutes and they may come back to you, and you got to do the process all over again. We have to be really patient, right? But what we're teaching kids during this time is that we can manage these emotions. They're going to come, and sometimes they're going to come fast and furious. But each time they come, we're going to manage them. We're going to do what we know we need to do, and then we're going to move on, okay? But it's that acknowledgement of it, the distraction, and then the checking of the facts. And if you have to do that 10, 15, 20 times a day, that's what we need to be doing right now. Keeping it small, right? Don't look too far into the future. Kids don't usually future trip too much. I mean, their future is not like a year from now. It's usually like in the next 2 weeks, which is a godsend. But for us as adults, we tend to think about what's going to happen at the end of the school year. What's going to happen this summer? What about our Christmas trip? What about, what about my kid going off to college? We don't know. Nobody really knows, right? Again, this is all unprecedented. And the uncertainty really drives the anxiety. So as much as possible, try and keep it, what are we doing this week? Because that's really all we can kind of bank on, right? Is knowing what's happening this week. And again, with your kids, with your families, with yourself, with your friends, try and just say, how are we doing this week? And what I would suggest is that at the, putting your plan in place for the week, and then on Sunday, kind of do a check-in with everybody. How's everybody doing? How did we do this week as a family? What do we need? What's next week look like? What do people have coming up? Just kind of do a family meeting, not a big, long, laborious, thing, but just 10-minute check-in to see how did we do last week and what does the week ahead look like, right? But keeping it to really, really small segments of time, that's a little more manageable. Like I can get through Friday, right? I know I can get through Friday. And then I'll do it next week. I'll do the same thing, right? As we talked a little before the webinar started, sticking to a routine as much as possible. So getting up every day, if you can, get out of your pajamas, right? Leave the bedroom, try and keep the bedroom for sleeping. It's hard, and I'm gonna amend that by saying that if you have multiple kids at home and they're all homeschooling, and then you've got parents at home that are working or just trying to, not be hovering around the kids are going to be in their rooms a lot more than probably we would like. And during school hours, I think that's okay. If possible, they should get out of bed to do their work. If they don't have a desk in their room, they can work on the floor. You can put a makeshift desk in there, a card table, or, the computer can go pretty much anywhere, but really as much as possible, and this is just good sleep hygiene, the bed should be just for sleeping. So you might need to move furniture around in the house, and everybody gets like a comfy chair that's usually in the living room, move it to their bedrooms, right? So aesthetically, it might shake things up, but if it makes people comfortable and gets them out of their bed, that's what we need to do, right? So I've got my home office is now in my bedroom, right? And so, but the bed is for sleeping, and set up an area where you can work. I think it's great if your kids can all work together in the same room. I think that's, for many families, that's really hard, especially if you have high schoolers. They may not want to work all together, so we have to be sensitive to that. But again, sticking to the routine as much as possible, getting up at a reasonable time, going to bed at a reasonable time, eating, when you would normally eat, trying exercise a little every day, and socializing as much as, as you would have if the kids were in school, right? wanted to talk about a little bit about family time, because there's a push now, I think, to have families spend a lot of time together to take advantage of everybody being home. And that is a lovely thought. And I am, a huge advocate of family time. If your family was not one to spend a lot of family time together 2 weeks ago, I think that you need to put reasonable expectations on the family now, right? So not asking your kid to gather together for a lengthy dinner and then a family movie and then a, family game night. Maybe start with once a week you have family game night, right? Or a family movie night. Start with that. So you don't want to stray, you don't want to go full bore, we have to spend every night together because we're here as a family and we have to take full advantage of this. That might be a goal to increase it, but increasing it incrementally, okay? It's sort of like when you want to change sleep habits, we try and do it 15 minutes at a time. We don't go for, I used to go to bed at midnight, so now I'm going to go to bed at 9 o'clock. We don't adapt that quickly, and that leads to resentment. So a great way to make your kids super resentful is to say, hey, guess what? Every night we're going to eat dinner for 45 minutes together, and then we're all going to, work on this 2,000 piece puzzle that I ordered from Amazon, right? That's the first way that they're going to run for the hills. So think about it. What works for your family and what is an incremental addition that you can make without bombarding your kids with family time. I think it's important to really validate what our kids are missing out on right now. I think that they are missing out on a lot, and that's really hard. It's hard for all of us, right? But to say, oh, when I was your age, I didn't have any of this Zoom and we would have been sitting, by ourselves, and that doesn't help anybody. And it's really dismissive of what our kids are going through. This is the world that they live in, right? They're used to getting out every day and seeing their friends. They're used to having a lot of activities, many of them. Those are all taken away. Prom, graduation, we don't know about all of these things, but we can assume that, they might be postponed at the very least. So I really think that not using this as a teachable moment to say, oh, it could be worse, and going back to our own childhood and saying what we've missed, but really saying, I get it. I get what you're missing, and allow for that space for that to be really a sad thing, and not try and dismiss it or make it go away. Let them feel what they're feeling, and let your home or your relationship be a space where they can talk about what they're missing out on, because it's very real. And it's been interesting for me as a clinician. I work with a ton of adolescents that, we always say, my generation, right? We always say, oh, they're just on their phones anyway. They're not really socializing. I have found that they are really, really missing being out in the world. If there's any testament to, yes, they do use their phones a lot for communication, that in-person contact is still super, super important to all of us as human beings. So as much as possible, whatever level of independence your kids had before the current restrictions were put into place, it would be great if we could find ways to allow them to still be independent at an appropriate level. And I don't, I would welcome suggestions that other people have used, but one thing that comes to mind is let them eat, their breakfast and their lunch when they want, and pretty much what they want, right? And then dinner, can be the family time. If they were used to doing their homework right after school, or they waited until the evening, let them still continue to have some measure of independence, because that's a really important, we want this, whatever skills they had attained in terms of independence, self-motivation, we want those to be in place when we come out of this current level of restriction, this quarantine, right? we could, and we will, right? And we don't want our kids to have regressed to the point where they can't do the things that they used to do, right? So as much as possible, allow your kids to be as independent, as age appropriate, and as they had developed prior to this. And then rules, regulations, policies, and procedures. Rules should always be based on safety. So the rules are the same, and now we have town-wide rules, we have statewide rules that these are non-negotiable, right? So these are rules that are put into place to protect everyone, and I'm sure there will be consequences if we break the rules, but I can't stress enough that if a rule is put in place by the town body or the state or the country, they are there for our protection and they're based on safety. So this is a great time to say, hey, the rules that we have in our house are for safety. These rules that are put in place by the outside world are for our safety as well. And these are non-negotiable, right? So please, 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 for everybody's safety, follow the rules. And also use this as an opportunity to say, this is why we have rules. This is why we have rules about drinking. This is why we have rules about vaping. This is why we have rules about driving. They're put in place for our safety. So it's a great way to kind of mirror the rules that we have in place all the time in our homes with the rules that are now being put into place for the safety of everybody. That's kind of the frame that I wanted to set for our conversation, and we can dive down into any of those areas or different areas that I haven't touched on. So I would open it up for questions, comments, ideas. Use this as an opportunity to share ideas.
Yeah. Please do feel free to use whichever function. Okay, so we have a raised hand. Do you mind? I don't know how. Okay. Do you mind using the Q&A or chat function to either ask a question or a comment or a suggestion? They should be right at the bottom of your screen. If you're having any problems, please just type it in the chat and someone on our team will help you. If anyone has been doing anything that works really well. I know Tracey and I were talking in the beginning that for me, it's like taking my dog on an hour-long walk each night. Mm-hmm. Oh, great. So we just got a comment that another thought is to let them do their schoolwork independently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Right. Yes. You know, we are homeschooling, but we are not there. We should not assume the role of their teachers. And this, again, this kind of goes under the independence category. The kids are going to do what they're going to do. You know, everybody is in the same boat in terms of everybody's kids are getting the same assignment from the same teacher. And so I would really caution that parents use this as an opportunity to dive into what their kids are doing at school and become overly involved. Thank you so much for bringing that up. This goes under the please let the kids be independent, right? This is they should go to school. So wherever they're doing school, you should set them up, see if they need anything, but you should let them do their thing. And I know many kids are actually FaceTiming with other kids in their class. So kind of trying to replicate a virtual classroom. I would much rather see them do that than to have mom, dad, or someone, you know, another adult sitting side by side with them while they're doing their work. I think that we run the risk of becoming way too involved in our kids' schoolwork, and then we'll see our kids regress. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Very, very, very important.
We have another really good question, is how is it best to handle this situation where others may be more lenient with the rules, where friends are still getting together and maybe other parents aren't enforcing the same rules?
Right. So this is like, this is the same thing as, somebody's having a house party and there's drinking there and everybody's going, Mom, why can't I go? Well, it's against the law, right? So just like going out and going to the beach right now is not, I guess it's not technically against the law. I don't think they're arresting people, but it's breaking the rules, and the rules are there for safety. So, you know, the same rules, regulations, policies, and procedures that you had in your family for dealing with things like kids drinking or partying, they should be the same for this. It's against the law. We don't do that. And it's for everybody's safety. So, you know, there's always going to be people that are pushing the limits. Again, whatever rules you had in place for these non-negotiable rules should stay in place. So I do think, you know, there's the opportunity that I think it's allowed that a couple of kids can get together doing, you know, an activity outside. But, you know, we have to be very, very mindful of what's being put in place. And if it gets to a point where there are too many kids, you know, we have to break that up.
Yeah, so to piggyback off of that, some of you may have been on while Tracey and I were having a bit of a discussion, but we were both saying how her family and me and my friends, we've been meeting a lot on Zoom or Google Hangout, which is free. And Zoom is free for a few people for a little while. And, you know, we both found that to be great ways to socialize. That could be something else to suggest to your kids. And there are games that you can play on your phone. And I'm happy to send out some of those as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got a question about some concern about kids developing PTSD from this experience. Could you step us through that? Maybe how PTSD develops? Are there any things we should be mindful of, or ways to prevent any type of reactions later in life?
Yeah, I mean, this will definitely for some people be experienced as a trauma. I think that you wouldn't see PTSD symptoms right now. What you're going to be seeing is anxiety symptoms. And so I would be mindful, particularly if you have kids that are already struggling with anxiety or depression. You want to be they are most vulnerable right now. So we want to be very mindful of that, and hopefully you have, you know, clinicians or a pediatrician, somebody that you can reach out to and say, look, my kid is, you know, seems to be struggling more. I know myself, all of the colleagues that I work closely with, we're all working virtually. So, you know, please reach out if you think that your kid is really in some sort of a crisis, right? So if they're having trouble getting out of bed, if they can't eat, if they're not showering or not engaging with friends via the ways that they can, if they're not able to go to school, all of those things are red flags. I would reach out to somebody and have a conversation. I think PTSD develops over time, and I think this is one of those situations where it's going to be experienced differently for everyone. And we don't really know what this will be like for everybody, because we're still in it. But I would, again, that's sort of future tripping. If you're thinking about PTSD right now, just think about managing anxiety and depression as they're presenting themselves right now. And how we manage this as a community, if it was starting, how we manage this as our families, how we manage it as a community, as a country. It's a scary, scary time. But if we manage it and get through it, the human spirit wants to get back to some sort of homeostasis. They want to get back to life as normal. We are sort of programmed to do that. So the vast majority of us will bounce back from this and just, you know, be able to look back and say, holy mackerel, that was really, really tough. There will be those that will experience this as an acute trauma. And we will have to be mindful at some point about helping those folks. But right now, it's really just focusing on what's presenting itself right now.
Thank you. We got another really good question that's similar to one before, but definitely has a different spin. Many of the parents have college-age kids back home that are used to complete independence and think they're invincible. What suggestions or tips do you have for speaking to that age group?
Yeah.
Convincing them to stay home and safe.
Yeah, exactly. This is really, really tough. And talking about, so I was actually in Spain 2 weeks ago and had to rush home. So I was sitting on the plane and there were 2 college kids, one on either side of me. And the one to my right was a young woman who had been studying abroad in the UK. And she was sobbing on the phone. And I heard her talking to her dad, saying, "Dad, you know, this was the first time that I felt like I belonged. I was really, you know, hitting my stride, and now it's all been taken away." It was just devastating. And for the next 7 hours, she either slept or she got up and she cried. And it was heartbreaking, right? I was feeling sorry for myself because my trip got cut short, right? But for her, her life was changed dramatically in one moment, right? So because she was thinking, I'm going to ride it out in the UK and I'm going to be fine, and I might have to quarantine a little bit, but so it's been, that's an extreme, the kids that were studying abroad that had to come home, but even the kids that were studying in the US and had to come home, really, really, really devastating, especially for kids that had just started or senior year, right? Just all of these are major losses for our kids, and we have to be very mindful of that. So that's the first thing, is to just recognize what they've lost, because if they were functioning well at school and really happy, this can be devastating for many of them. They may not go back to that life that they had created. So I know that they're used to going out. And again, this is, these rules aren't in place for us to be punitive. These rules are in place because it's for the safety of everybody. And, if you feel comfortable and safe, maybe, have your kid be the one that's responsible for going out and getting the groceries, right? If they can. So give them something that they can get in the car and they can drive. Maybe, just letting them take the car out and drive around, or maybe letting them go and pick up food, right? So giving them a little bit so that they're not cooped up at home. But it's hard. I mean, they're going to be grumpy. You know what? Let them be grumpy. This is not a battle that you want to fight right now. If they're being snarky and they want to stay in their room and they're being a little short and they're, so let it be. Don't say, oh, you're being disrespectful and, this is my home and you're back in my home. No, this is, adults trying to live together in a new way. And so just don't fight every battle. Just some of the stuff you just want to ignore and let it go, right? And again, they're used to spending a lot of time not talking to you. So this is when that letting people do their own thing as much as possible and not putting unreasonable demands, at least not right away, on kids that have come home from college.
Thank you. We have a parent who has a teen that's a bit of a perfectionist, and she's anxious and she's started tidying up and cleaning up, and this parent wants to know how she can help her daughter.
She can come over my house. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Humor.
This is, again, this is the way that some folks cope with their anxiety, right? So perfectionism is a result of anxiety. And so if that helps her to calm down, to feel some sense of control in a really out of control situation, there's not anything inherently wrong with it. If she can't do the things that she needs to do during the day because of the need to tidy and organize, then you're talking about a different thing. But if she's using that as a coping skill, rather than, you know, what some other people are using as a coping skill, there's not anything inherently wrong with it. If she can maybe let you know how anxious she is, maybe she can give you a scale. We usually use 0 to 10. Some people use colors, you know, green, yellow, orange, red. What zone are you in? And maybe just check in with her and say, how anxious are you right now? And maybe try and use some of the distraction activities that I talked about at the beginning to try and lower the level of the anxiety. And then if she still wants to go and organize, that's fine. Maybe sit with her while she's organizing and just try and engage her in conversation about something other than, you know, coronavirus, so that she can be doing the activity that is soothing to her, but she can also be, you know, not stuck in her head. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Tracey. Sorry, I had to run up and get my dog. Yeah, do we have any other questions for Tracey? I mean, this has been immensely helpful even for me, even though I don't have children. I think just, you know, helping, you know, how do we, you know, first make ourselves well before we can help them also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Allison. I think that we need to tend to our own mental health first. It's that whole philosophy of, if we don't have our oxygen mask on, we shouldn't be, you know, giving an oxygen mask to anybody else. So this is as unsettling and uncomfortable for adults as it is for kids, perhaps more. Kids are amazingly resilient and they will bounce back. How we manage ourselves during this is really, really important. They're looking to us to model how to be, right? And that is, especially for younger kids, they're really looking to us to say, should I be scared? How scared should I be? What should I do when I'm scared? So if we can employ effective coping skills, then they're going to pick up on that. And that's really important. But taking time for ourselves every day and not feeling like we have to solve every problem and figure out everything and know every bit of data is to just really, really, really be mindful of our own level of anxiety and taking the time to do what we need to do.
Great. So I'm just getting some requests to let people know when the recording will be available. We will work on that as soon as possible. We have Chelsea Starks from our marketing team on it. Thanks, Chelsea. So if anyone has any questions, please do email me at allison@golivegirl.org. If I can't help you, we have plenty of people in our network like Tracey who can help you, and I will do everything I can to find the resources that you need. Thank you so much for being with us today, Tracey.
Oh, my pleasure. And if, you know,
so grateful.
Yeah, if I can help in any way, just reach out through LiveGirl, and I'm here to answer any questions as we kind of muddle through this together. But just staying in the moment and you know, doing the best we can.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry, I'm just taking a look at some other comments before I close anything. So again, please do feel free to reach out to us. With LiveGirl, we've got a lot of virtual events going on. We have a weekly confidence club that will be sent straight to your inbox. So please go to our website and see what else we have going on. GoLiveGirl.org, and follow us on Instagram at GoLiveGirl. Encourage your daughters to watch our, we have our interns doing Instagram lives with craft ideas and that type of thing. So please stay connected. And again, Tracey, thank you so much. And we'll have a recording up and out as soon as possible.
You're welcome. Good luck, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye.
Thanks, Allison. Bye-bye.
Bye.